Wondering what to do with all those leftover veggies you bought this week? I'm gonna show you how to make the easiest soup ever that you can throw in your freezer and have all week long. So to start our soup, we're gonna add some fat to our pan, and this can be oil, butter, kind of whatever you want. We're gonna use some olive oil today. So pan for like medium high. And again, this is just sort of a basic guideline to soup. So I want you to be able to customize however you want, and then of course tell me what you're doing with your soup. So I've got some olive oil heating in my pan. So this is starting to get hot. We'll add some shallots, give them a little stir, get them going. You don't really want to add any color to your vegetables. We're just softening them. And then they're going to cook in some liquid, and then we're gonna blend them down. Let's add some garlic, just a rough chop. Lower it a little bit because I can see a little bit of color. And we're gonna go for our leeks. And again, just keep tossing. Make sure everything's really nice and coated in that fat. So I'm using butternut squash and potato for this soup, but you can use any vegetable you want. I've got some kohlrabi here, some turnips, some zucchini. This is a great recipe also if you've got like a bunch of vegetables that are about to go bad and you don't know what to do with them. Chop them up, make a soup, and then stick it in the freezer, and you have soup that's delicious for forever. All right, now that our leeks, shallots, and garlic are soft, I'm gonna add our butternut squash and our potato. And we're gonna give it a nice toss, make sure it's nice and coated in all that fat. We're gonna give it a little bit of a season. So I've got some kosher salt, and I got a little bit of white pepper. I'm gonna do about a teaspoon. All right, so what we're really trying to do is just sort of soften the vegetables. And then we're gonna cover them with water and let them cook until they're nice and soft. You can also use stock if you want. That's totally fine. But remember, if you're using water versus stock, you use water, you're gonna need a lot more seasoning, more salt, more pepper, more aromatics like herbs. If you're using stock, a lot of that's already in there. So just remember to sort of taste as you go, keep that in mind, and your soup will be amazing. Now that that's all going, I'm gonna add all of our herbs. And again, customize this how you want. I'm gonna do a bay leaf, I'm gonna do some sage and some rosemary, and we're gonna toss these guys in. And again, give them a nice stir. Really get all that flavor in there. Now, deglazing, we're gonna use some white wine. I also like to use brandy, cognac, red wine. Vodka's great too, like in a vodka sauce. So we're just gonna do about a quarter cup. So as you can see, the liquid's a little cloudy, and that's the starch from the potato. That's fine. You just might need to add a little more water or stock to cover. But the idea of deglazing is if you're using, I'm using a nonstick pan right now, so it's a little bit different, but especially if you're using a pan that is not nonstick, you'll notice that you get little caramelized bits that stick to the bottom of the pan. When you add wine or another liquid to deglaze, you want to scrape the bottom of the pan like that to really get all those bits up. That's where all the flavor is. It's called the Maillard reaction, and you're turning amino acids into sugars, and all those sugars you really want to get into your liquid, into your food. And if they just stay at the bottom, you're not really imparting any of that flavor. All right, looking good. Our wine is almost completely evaporated, reduced. Oh my God, it smells amazing. So I've got about 6 cups of water here, but this is not a general rule. The general rule is make sure your vegetables are covered. We're just gonna add till our vegetables are covered. But remember, we have a potato, and it's gonna take up a lot of liquid. So I'm gonna give it just a little extra splash, just for our potato. Okay, so we're just coming up to a simmer now. So what we wanna do is lower the heat a little bit and put a lid on. And we're gonna let this cook for about 40 minutes is sort of the general rule. But I would say check after about 20, because ideally you just want your vegetables to be soft, like really nice and soft. It's not really about how much time, like cook this for 35 minutes exactly. It's more like cook it for 20, have it check, stick a fork in it, see if it's soft. All right, so our soup's been cooking about 40 minutes. I checked it around 20. It wasn't really quite soft enough yet. 20 minutes is like a good increment to keep cooking in for this soup. So, lid off. Oh, wow. The soup is done. If you want to serve it just like this, go for it. Personally, I like to puree it. I think it just looks really nice, all the flavors meld together, so that's what we're gonna do. In order to do that, we gotta take out all the woody, hard herbs that are in here. So, we've got a bay leaf, let's get that out. And we've got some rosemary stems that need to go carefully. And we're good to blend, so our heat is off. And I'm gonna use an immersion blender. I really like these, but you can totally use a blender. You just have to be really careful because the heat, when you turn it on, is gonna like create a vacuum. It could explode. So just use a hand blender. So always start on low. Make sure that your blender is in the soup before you start. So I'm just gonna give it a little tilt just to create more depth for my immersion blender. And we'll go. All right, that looks pretty dang good to me. And we are ready to plate. And this recipe makes about 4 servings, depending on like the serving size. But because it's such a customizable recipe, you can just keep adding. If you want to add more vegetables, add a little more oil, add a little more herbs, add a little more seasoning. And then just make sure you're covering it with enough water so that it's really all cooking down. So we have our soup in our bowl. As I said, I'm just gonna garnish it with a few herbs. I'll give a little drizzle of olive oil too. And that is it. So this is the basic veggie soup. And again, you can make this with any vegetables you want, any fat. Throw some sesame oil in there and make it more of like an Asian-y flavored dish. Put some grapeseed oil in and use a higher heat vegetable that maybe needs a little more punch. If you want, you can roast the vegetables first instead of putting them in a pot. As long as they're soft by the time you cover them with some liquid, you're good to go. I'm gonna try our butternut squash potato soup. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. These flavors are amazing, but this soup is so easy that you can do it with anything and look like a total pro. So go try it and let me know what veggies you use.